If you look at the headlines, you might think the gaming industry is doing fine as they grew by 7% last year. But that number was artificially inflated by squeezing existing players and hiking retail prices. Behind the scenes, the entire market is under pressure from component crises and skyrocketing development budgets. Well, technology is supposed to become cheaper as time goes on. Nowadays, however, console manufacturing costs have escalated almost threefold, turning what used to be an accessible form of home entertainment into a luxury. If you dig deeper, it all comes down to chips. The top three silicon suppliers, Samsung, SK, and Micron, have shifted their production away from standard consumer parts to meet the far more lucrative demand for AI infrastructure. As a result, memory prices nearly doubled in just 3 months and are expected to keep climbing. So console makers have pushed these rising costs directly onto consumers, and this has created an anomaly where video game hardware is significantly more expensive today than it was at launch. And consumers are pushing back hard against these premium price tags, causing hardware sales to crash. So how do the major video game manufacturers plan to counter this?
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Xbox One.
Over the last few years, they poured over $80 billion into content and acquisitions like Activision. However, its revenue still dropped by $500 million as it lost the hardware sales to PlayStation 3 to 1. Much of this failure was completely self-inflicted. While Sony's single hardware approach allowed developers to launch games on schedule, Xbox versions got trapped in months of delays because Microsoft strictly mandated that every game be able to run on both the premium Series X and the weaker Series S, creating a massive problem that drove eager players who wanted to play blockbuster games when they first launched straight to PlayStation. Combined with aggressive 50% price hikes for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, this has caused consumers to cancel their subscriptions and has flatlined the service at 30 million users, a devastating loss of 4 million players from its peak. To resolve the situation, the new Xbox CEO immediately slashed prices and stripped popular titles like Call of Duty of their Day One status on the service, forcing players to buy them. Xbox also announced that its blockbusters would remain exclusive, while only multiplayer-heavy games would cross over to competing platforms. What followed was even more brutal. Just last month, Sharma announced a restructuring that eliminated 20% of the Xbox workforce, halved vendor spending, and dismantled its creative division, spinning off individual studios or putting them up for sale, leaving high-profile projects like Arcane's Blade in jeopardy. Ultimately, Microsoft is quietly tapping out. We all know that the era of Xbox is officially over. Then there is PlayStation. It has long been Sony's primary growth engine, pulling in over $25 billion in revenue from its game and network services segment. However, there are severe component shortages that push the PlayStation 6 back by at least 2 years, and it could be the company's final console due to limits on what can be improved. The situation is getting much worse, thanks to the massive fallout from the $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie. The company has spread its resources far too thin across multiple projects, while its flagship title, Destiny 2, suffered declining player numbers, forcing Sony to scale back and significantly downsize the studio. The company is also stopping physical disc production for all new games starting in 2028 to cut overhead. This reduces game purchases to nothing more than temporary digital licenses, causing deep unrest among players. So we can never truly know when Sony is going to permanently shut off its digital storefronts, just like what they did with the PlayStation 3 and PS Vita. And the management knows that to survive the current market, the company must de-risk its portfolio. They are shifting half of their investment budget into brand new properties, stop porting its catalog to PC, and shutting down underperforming segments. So what does their future actually look like? No one understands this better than the higher-ups, who perfectly timed their exits, cashing out nearly $10.5 million just as the company authorized a share buyback program. Nintendo, however, tells a completely different story. By opting out of the race for high-end performance, they have launched the Nintendo Switch 2 at a much more affordable price point of $450, successfully capturing the middle class. In its first year on the market, the Nintendo Switch 2 has shipped almost 20 million units worldwide. Their secret lies in smart hardware economics, where they use mature and cost-effective components. Not only that, exclusive franchises like Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon account for over 70% of all games sold in its ecosystem, which is significantly higher than the industry average, helping the company lock in profits. But even all good things come to an end. Following its launch, the Switch 2 suffered severe inventory shortages, causing U.S. retail sales to drop by 35% between November and December of 2025. Analysts are already warning that rising component costs and global tariffs could force another round of price hikes, threatening the platform's long-term affordability. Beyond pricing, Nintendo has stripped the system of popular streaming apps like Hulu and Crunchyroll to cut costs while introducing major hardware complications. The new Switch 2 is physically incompatible with older accessories, completely blocking several legacy games unless we purchase original controllers separately. To top it off, Nintendo is already phasing out the original Switch across Europe and other major regions, forcing players to buy the new console. And we haven't even touched on the price of the games themselves, which are now pushing past $80. Driven by economic pressures, video game spending among 18 to 24-year-olds has dropped by nearly 25% compared to last year. While the traditional console slips out of reach, players are migrating to where the price still makes sense, pushing PC gaming on Steam and the mobile games market to new heights. All of these trends point to a much bigger collapse among traditional AAA studios. For decades, the video game industry relied on selling consoles at a loss to build a massive user base, then making that money back through premium games and subscriptions. But looking ahead, that classic business model is completely falling apart. So do you think consoles will even be around 10 years from now? Let me know your thoughts and check out our other videos here. See you next time.